Jai Jagat, everybody. Children, we are going to begin with the parallel session. The whole purpose of organizing these parallel sessions is that when you are in the hall, we are not able to pay that much attention to the speakers, to the honorable justices who have come from different parts of the world, and one-to-one interaction is not possible. That is the reason why we have these parallel sessions. So, one, I will expect you to all to be very, very attentive. Listen to the speakers. For 15 minutes each, the speakers will be speaking. And at the end of the session, that is after an hour, half an hour will be yours, where you will be asking questions and receiving answers, and we will be deliberating over the topics that are going to be discussed in the session this time. We are very honored to have these justices with us. First of all, we have Honorable Madam Justice Graciela Dixon from Panama. She is the former Chief Justice of Supreme Court of Justice in Panama and former President of International Association of Women Judges. We also have with us Honorable Madam Justice Maria Evelina Gracia Baladuini, who is the judge from Criminal Court of Appeals, Rio Negro Province in Argentina. We also have Honorable Madam Justice Luciline Eparadisia Canela de Mello, who is judge from the Court of Justice, Sao Paulo in Brazil. Though in majority in the world, in minority we have Honorable Justice Mr. Dr. Claudio Antonio Villalba Brites, who is judge from Criminal Court of Arantes in Paraguay. I welcome you all, sirs and madams, and expect that we will be having a very lively session with Madam Justice Graciela Dixon as the chairperson, who is very well versed with English, who is very well versed with women issues in the world, who is very well versed with the children issues in the world, who is very, very experienced and a dynamic lady. I hand over the session to Madam Dixon. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
The session is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, can you hear me? You sure you can hear me? Yes. Oh, no, I know you can hear me. Okay, very good. First of all, I want to thank you and welcome you to this session. And we are expecting that we are going to have a dynamic session, which means you are going to be allowed to introduce your questions as well as your suggestions and ideas that you may develop from listening to these women and this gentleman who are going to be presenting to you their vision. What we are called to do this morning, we have two main goals, and you are the main participants in this session. Though we have presenters, we have people who are going to be presenting, who are these experts sitting here with me, you are the main participants of this session. Our main goal is to call your attention and trigger your imagination. We want you to get tempted. We want to provoke you. We want you to behave bad. We want you to be different. We want you to start thinking, how would you be running the world when you grow up a couple of years from here? Because the whole idea is that you are the leaders of tomorrow, and we are going to be the past. So what we are going to do today, we are going to pass on to you our thinkings, the way we see the world and the way we think things should be done. But we want you to take our experience and our opinion and turn it upside down. Play with it, exercise with it, and give us your input so that the new product that comes out will be the result of the fusion of the two generations, your generation and our generation, producing something new for a new world, for a better world. Is this possible? Do you think we can do that? Yeah. Are you interested in getting engaged in such an experiment? Yeah. Are you sure you really want to do that, or is your teachers told you got to do that? Now say the truth. I'm a judge now. Say the truth, all the truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay? Good. So we have the idea clear now, and we're about to get started. Our guest speakers have been introduced. and we are going to ask them to initiate, and I'm going to initiate with my dear colleague, from Argentina. Her name is Maria Evelina Garcia Balduini. She has a long, beautiful name. And we are going to ask her to have her introduction of her perspective on the issue that has been presented to us this morning. We are supposed to do an exercise, particularly regarding, enforceable law for a new governance, for a new world. And she has some ideas that we want to share. We want her to share with us. And from here on, oh, that's nice. Now I hear myself. Thank you. Yes, she has some ideas we want her to share with us. And thereafter, we will be listening to Mrs. Lucilene, she's Brazilian. Lucilene Aparecida Canela de Melo. Did I use the proper accent?
His name is longer than
Her name is longer than yours, yes. Hers is longer. I agree. You see, she's a judge. That happens when you have too many lawyers and judges on one table. And at the end, we're going to be listening to the presentation of our dear colleague. He is Dr. Claudio Antonio Villalba Brites. Did I pronounce it properly? Okay. Guess what? He's the only guy on the table, so we are majority. The girls are majority. Anyway, we're ready to take off, and I would ask Mrs. Maria
okay,
to start her presentation immediately. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Namaste. Jai Jagat. I want to thank the City Montessori School for the organization of the Congress, for the invitation, and express the honor I feel being here and participating in this reunion of international Chief Justices in times where the world is so fragmented. I will be speaking Spanish just to make an introduction, and then a translator, my daughter, Angels, will say it in English. ¿Es okay? He preparado un trabajo que contiene una reflexión muy profunda en mi persona particular y en mi labor como juez criminal, si bien mi especialidad no son los menores, cuyo título es Menores de edad en relación con la ley penal y con la política, con el poder político en mi país, en Argentina. Y he tomado de Shakespeare, concretamente de Hamlet, esta frase textual del príncipe de Dinamarca: algo huele mal en Dinamarca, expresando que la situación de los menores en relación con la ley penal y con el poder político está muy mal. En un país como el mío, decía, la República Argentina en América del Sur, el país más austral del planeta, en el que en el próximo mes de diciembre va a haber un nuevo o nueva presidente, el tema de los menores en conflicto con la ley penal ha sido motivo de campaña política, como es usual, por su altísima sensibilidad. Claro que no desde el punto de vista que debería serlo, es decir, para reflexionar primero y actuar después, con miras a resolver el enfrentamiento entre la minoridad, la ley penal y el grupo social, sino para sumar adhesiones a través de una respuesta providencial a dicho enfrentamiento. Así el candidato oficialista, Daniel Scioli, habla de un vacío legal que impide juzgar a los menores delincuentes y por ello no tienen juicios ni causas, y de destinar muchos millones de pesos para reforzar la fuerza policial. Propone, además, como la gran mayoría de los políticos que conozco, la baja de la edad de inimputabilidad o de imputabilidad a los 14 años, como en otros países, España, Italia, Alemania, Uruguay, por mencionar algunos, los precursores en este controversial tema. Con críticas cruzadas, otro de los candidatos, ambos, Scioli y Mauricio Macri, con las mayores posibilidades de acceder a la presidencia, dice algo similar, cuestionando desde el discurso político la situación actual y atribuyendo responsabilidades al gobierno nacional del cual es opositor. Y un tercer candidato, Sergio Massa, hace de lo que en mi país llamamos inseguridad, es decir, la comisión de delitos indiscriminadamente, su base de campaña, prometiendo firmeza y rigor para combatir el delito. Bien, discursos políticos que en definitiva me permiten, me atrevo a hacer un diagnóstico, son discursos proselitistas, desde ya no podría ser de otra manera, pero en lo que nos importa aquí, netamente punitivos. Como fuera, desde el poder se mira el tema al final, cuando han chocado el menor y la ley penal, y aparece en el medio la víctima dolida. Me sigo preguntando realmente al día de hoy si es que quienes ostentan el poder no saben razonar o es una más de las mezquindades políticas irreconciliables con un Estado inteligente, preocupado por sus enfermedades, caritativo, socialmente justo, que debería trabajar para alejar a los menores del delito, es decir, para que no los cometieran. Thank you very much. Translation, please, Ángeles.
Minors, criminal law and politics, Argentina. Something smells bad in Denmark. In a country like mine, Argentina, South America, the southest country in the world, where next December will be a new president, the issue of children in conflict with the law has been a source of political campaign for its high sensitivity. Certainly not from the point of view that it should be, that is, to think first and act later with a view to resolving the conflict between the minority, criminal law, and social group, but to gather votes through a providential response to the confrontation and claim victims. The government candidate, Daniel Scioli, speaks of a loophole that prevents judged minors and therefore they don't have judgments or causes. To spend many millions of pesos to the police force and even add retired police officers, especially to combat insecurity, and claims to have a law regulating the issue as well as lowering the age of criminal responsibility to 14 years, as in Spain, Italy, Germany, Uruguay. Cross-criticism, Mauricio Macri, the other candidate, opposition, both with the greatest chances of accessing the presidency, says something similar, questioning the current situation. A third candidate, Sergio Massa, makes the insecurity base of his campaign, promising firmness and rigor to fight crime. A diagnosis. They are proselytizing speeches, but in what concerns us here, clearly punitive. Either way, from the power, the subject is look at the end of the road, when the child and criminal law are already crushed, and the victim appears hurt. I keep wondering if the holders of the power do not know how to reason, or if it is another pity policy, concerned about their illness, socially just, working to ward off minor from crime, working to make them not commit. An existential question. I wonder how a president can live with food and comfortably warm, existing at least one boy or girl hungry and cold, brewing, in most cases, a resentment that leads to crime. a way to express to the system. An analysis of the causes. I was attracted by an article entitled Keys to Understanding the Motives of Minors Delinquency. Three theories. In Crime and Drift, a David Matza classic from the 60s, the American sociologist challenges traditional categories for understanding crime and provides new tools to avoid the stigmas to explain the motives of young people who break the law. Emblem author of this subject, he works on the impact the control theories have had based on the idea that criminal acts occur when the link between the individual and society becomes weak or broken. He proposes new concepts to reveal the links between crime culture and conventional culture, while explaining who are the ones that break the rules and what can encourage them to do so. And unlike current theories, such as innovation, Robert Merton, to whom the crime acts like a shortcut or alternative path for those who have denied the legitimate access way to economic and social improvement, refutes the theory of differentiation, which associates the positive criminology. In this manner, he argues that the action of a criminal is not activated by values and beliefs opposite from the conventional. Who commits a crime may be encouraged by the same moral principles than the rest of society. As Gabriel Kelster says, Matza doesn't negate the effects of learning and the importance of group factor, but in his view, what is assimilated in the peer group are a number of arguments that allow you to put on hold the negative moral assessments of illegal actions that can be committed. A look, mine. A certain conception of masculinity, the assessments of success and quick profits, an ambiguity with the attraction and rejection that generates violence, are among the factors that unify both visions. Enough seeing who commits. An experience. I actively participated in solidarity issues with Margarita Barrientos in the Hogar Los Piletones, with Grano de Mostaza helping the Chaco indigenous, with my city institutions to harbor juvenile detainees or family lacking, until I left everything in a militant act, ideologically convinced about the absurdity of the non-governmental organizations or helper of any particular type, because nothing is resolved, and because it is the state responsibility to protect them, because they are defenseless, or is not a monster who does not give a food and affection to a child. Indolent states, evading the problem or focusing only on the sanction. Only a happy childhood ensures this trilogy disappears or is attenuated, and it's far from my country to do this, because children are not priority. Minors in my state, Rio Negro, Patagonia, Argentina. In my state, there are no minor courts, that is, the specialized jurisdiction. Correctional judges with jurisdiction in imprisonment of up to 3 years, and criminals who dictate penalties that exceed that amount, I am one of them, judge minors. Although minor courts are created by law since the 90s, they have not been implemented. And further, the same judge that investigates elders investigates minors, unknown, therefore, the specific problem of the minority. My working hypothesis, deductive method, neither punitive political speeches, nor lowering the age of criminal responsibility, nor intellectual developments which address only the symptom of the problem, but a comprehensive study of the causes and conflict and state policy to eliminate or at least reduce minor delinquency. The slogan, "Boys and girls are not dangerous, we are in danger," from the National Network of Alternative Media made an impact on me. It says, "Not to the low age of criminal responsibility." I think that resumes my point of view and this working hypothesis. "Oh, mother country," as one of the greatest heroes of my country said before he died, Manuel José del Corazón de Jesús Belgrano González, humble and selfless combatant, example of morality.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. We have received a brief presentation on the way the law or regulations on children's in the criminal law for children in Argentina, particularly in Rio Negro, is applied. It's designed and applied. We are now going to pass the microphone and give the floor to our dear friend Lucilene for her to share with us the views on how this same issue is handled in Brazil. Thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning. How are you? I don't speak English, but I speak Portuguese very well, but also and so. I'm very happy to be here with you. I would rather hear your inputs than present my own ideas. However, because of time limitations, if I will rather present on the law enforced for protection children in my country. I wish listen your heart, but it's impossible for in few minutes, and I will speak in Portuguese about my tema, ok? No Brasil, como é? O propósito do estudo é falar sobre a evolução e o desenvolvimento dos direitos das crianças internacionais e brasileiros. E, com isso, demonstrar a importância do controle do Poder Judiciário sobre as políticas afetas aos direitos humanos das crianças no Brasil durante a história e a realidade. Importante estabelecer a origem da proteção da lei da criança, que remonta ao século XX, especialmente após a Segunda Guerra Mundial, quando os avanços da medicina, ciências jurídicas, pedagógicas e psicológicas influenciaram para descobrir as especificidades da criança e suas necessidades, e depois disso ser capaz de formular seus direitos, uma vez que agora são vistos como seres especiais. A Declaração Universal dos Direitos da Criança. Em 1959, as Nações Unidas, ONU, proclamaram sua declaração sobre os direitos da criança, o que causou impacto significativo e profundo sobre as atitudes de cada nação a fim de proteger os direitos da infância. Nesta, a ONU reafirmou a importância de se garantir a universalidade, objetividade e igualdade na consideração de questões relacionadas aos direitos das crianças. A criança começou a ser considerada pela primeira vez na história absoluta prioridade, o que em si foi uma revolução imensurável. A declaração acentuou, por fim, a importância em se intensificar os esforços nacionais na promoção do respeito aos direitos da criança relativos à sua sobrevivência digna. com isso evitar a exploração e o abuso das crianças. No Brasil, a proteção das crianças é anterior à Convenção das Nações Unidas. A disposição expressa da Constituição brasileira, especialmente nos artigos 227, 228 e 229, que se seguiu a doutrina da Declaração dos Direitos da Criança de 1959. No artigo 227 da nossa Constituição, é dever da família, da sociedade e do Estado assegurar à criança e ao adolescente, com absoluta prioridade, o direito à vida, à saúde, à alimentação, à educação, ao lazer, à profissionalização, à cultura, à dignidade, ao respeito, à liberdade e à família e comunidade. E colocá-lo a salvo de toda forma de negligência, discriminação, exploração e crueldade. A aprovação dos institutos em proteção às crianças, com base na Declaração dos Direitos Humanos, foi preciosamente estabelecido no ECA, em 1990. Este documento legal é uma verdadeira revolução em termos de doutrina, ideias práticas e atitudes nacionais para a infância e juventude. Sua formulação contou com uma intensa e ampla participação do governo e da sociedade. Atualmente, o país tem normas integrativas para proceder a uma ação exemplar em defesa das crianças brasileiras. A democracia, que foi restaurada em 85, criou as condições ideais para essa ação completa, mas, infelizmente, não é o que se configura. Porque ainda há muito a ser feito no Brasil. A violação dos direitos humanos e o direito das crianças é cotidiana. Embora o país tenha sido capaz de desenvolver um dos códigos mais paradigmáticos sobre o direito das crianças, na verdade, a infância brasileira está longe de ser a prioridade absoluta. Por isso, é importante o judiciário, o juiz, na busca da realização dos objetivos fundamentais desses direitos. Sem a intervenção do judiciário nas políticas públicas, não tem como se efetivar esses direitos. Alguns limites, no entanto, devem ser vistos como restrições a isso, que é a garantia do mínimo existencial, razoabilidade da reivindicação contra a irrazoabilidade do governo e, finalmente, provisão para contingências deduzidas na reserva do possível. Uma vez satisfeitas essas restrições, é evidente que o Poder Judiciário, representado pelos juízes, pode influenciar os programas e ações do governo com o objetivo de alcançar as metas básicas do Estado. Em conclusão, podemos concluir que o desafio é enorme. A mobilização da sociedade para promover e garantir os direitos das crianças é primordial. A garantia das pessoas é o acesso ao judiciário que, ao proferir uma sentença de mérito, obriga o Estado a cumprir a ordem ou decisão judicial implementando políticas públicas. Essas, assim, deduzidas entre os próprios fundamentos do Estado e, assim, influir, entre outros, na melhor distribuição da renda pública, gestão de iniciativas públicas destinadas a melhorar a situação da criança e controle das omissões administrativas. Tudo isso com o objetivo principal de estabelecer uma justa e digna nação civilizada. I want to say, looking at life in an adolescent perspective is seeing hope. The heart is important, and the child is a heart that plays. Thank you. I'm sorry because it's muito grande. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lucilene. We are now going to listen to the interpreter who is going to read out the presentation that Lucilene has just given us and shared with us in Portuguese. And he's going to briefly give us highlights in English for your comprehension. Remember, you are the main guest of this room, and we are provoking you, truly provoking you. So we want you to put your brains to work. All right? Start taking notes. Get ready. There we go.
Okay, the translation. Overview. Evolution and development of the international and Brazilian children's rights. The objectives of this presentation are to demonstrate the importance of the judiciary's control over public policies affecting human rights of the children in Brazil over the years and the present-day reality. Origin. In order to analyze the subject, it is important to establish the origin of the child law protection, which dates back to the 20th century, especially after the Second World War, when advances in medicine, legal, pedagogical, and psychological sciences had influenced the discovery of child specificity and their needs, and after that to be able to formulate their rights since they are now seen as special. Universal Declaration of Children's Rights. In 1959, the United Nations proclaimed its Declaration on the Rights of the Child, which had a significant and profound impact on the attitude of each nation in order to protect childhood. In it, the UN reaffirmed the importance in ensuring the universality, objectivity, and equality in considering issues relating to children's rights. The child started to be considered, for the first time in history, absolute and priority subject of rights, which in itself was a profound revolution. The Declaration emphasized the importance of intensifying national efforts to promote respect for children's rights to survival, protection, development, and participation. The exploitation and abuse of children should be actively combated by attacking up the cause of reasons of such exploitation. Brazil. The protection of children in Brazil. Prior to the UN Convention itself, there was an express provision of the Brazilian Constitution of 1988, especially in its Articles 227, 228, and 229, which follow the doctrine of the Declaration of the Rights of the Child in 1959. It is worth recalling here the terms of Article 227. It is the duty of the family, society, and the state to ensure child and adolescent with absolute priority the right to life, health, food, education, leisure, professional training, culture, dignity, respect, freedom, and family and community living, and put it safe from all forms of neglect, discrimination, exploitation, violence, cruelty, and oppression. The approval of the Constitution institutes on behalf of children based on the Declaration of Human Rights and the Declaration of Children's Rights has been carefully established in the Child and Adolescent Statute, ECA, signed in 1990. This legal document is a true revolution in terms of doctrine, ideas, practice, national attitudes towards the child. In its formulation, it has accounted on an intense and wide participation of government and especially of society. Currently, the country has paradigmatic standards and integrative organizations for exemplary action defense of Brazilian children. Democracy, which was restored in 1985, creates the ideal condition for this full action. Brazilian reality. The Brazilian reality suggests that much remains to be done. In Brazil, the violation of human rights and children's rights is a daily fact. Although the country has been able to develop one of the most paradigmatic codes on the rights of the child, the ECA, in fact, the Brazilian childhood is far from being the absolute priority proclaimed by Constitution. The funds destined for the child have been limited, and the resources allocated to childhood are often misapplied, dispersed, misappropriated, largely lost in the morass of bureaucracy before they reach their true destiny, the child. Lack of competence, responsibility, and political will is common in most of the cases. Thus, the importance of the judiciary's control over public policies. The importance of the judiciary. In Brazilian law, there are few legal mechanisms that can be used by citizens in face of the state in seeking enforcement of rights, particularly aimed at the realization of the fundamental objectives of the state. They are the class action or individual lawsuits with collective effects of the appropriate means to cause the control and eventual intervention of the judiciary in public society. Some limits, however, should be seen as restriction. Ensure the existential minimum, the rationality of the claim versus the irrationality of the government, and at last the reserve for contingency. The cost of rights. Once met such restrictions, it is clear that the judiciary, represented by the judges, can influence in the programs and the government's actions aiming to achieve the basic goals of the state. Among these, primarily respect for human rights, now improving them, sometimes correcting them when wrong, and does so by applying sanctions to the state. The most effective sanctions are accountability for improper conduct, intervention in the federal entities, this is all in a federal state system, and the condemnation of responsibility crime. Conclusion. The challenge is enormous. The mobilization of society to promote and guarantee the rights of Brazilian children is necessary. Such security need from the people to trigger the judiciary and take the form of a merit judgment, rendered by a judge that an immutable part obliges the state to comply with the order or judicial decision implementing public policies, them deducted the foundations of the state and thus influences for better income distribution and management of public initiatives aimed at improving the situation of the child, with the primary purpose for establishing a civilized, just and dignified nation. Looking at life in an adolescent perspective is seeing hope. The heart is important and the child is a heart that plays. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that translation, and we thank again Lucy Lene for her presentation on the reality of the legislation applicable. Antonio Villalba, who is from Paraguay, and will be giving us his highlights on the reality of the enforcement of law in Paraguay regarding children.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm sorry, no speak English. Mi tema a desarrollar es la relación entre derecho internacional y el derecho interno. Vamos a iniciar primero por ciertas definiciones. El derecho interno se define como normas que rigen con carácter general y coactivo de un territorio del Estado, entre particulares o las relaciones de estas con el Estado. El derecho internacional regla las relaciones interestatales o de otros sujetos del derecho internacional por vía de acuerdos con carácter no coactivo. Conforman dos derechos diferentes a uno solo. Existen dos teorías. La primera, la llamada teoría dualista, sostiene que el derecho internacional y el interno son derechos separados, contactados entre sí pero no superpuestos, y sus normas no tienen vigencia en forma directa en el otro ordenamiento, salvo que hubieran sido incorporadas al derecho interno. Asimismo, afirma que pueden existir normas contradictorias entre el derecho interno y el derecho internacional y ser ambos vigentes. Por otra parte, la teoría monista considera que conforman un único derecho y por tanto no acepta contradicción entre ambos, pues en ese caso una de las dos normas debe anularse. Hay que distinguir si el conflicto se resuelve en sede internacional o dentro de un Estado. En el primer caso prevalecerá la aplicación de las normas internacionales, aunque es mayoritaria la idea de no anular las normas del derecho interno contradictorias, pues esa es una decisión de la soberanía de cada Estado. Solo podrá pedirse la reparación del perjuicio causado. La Convención de Viena sobre el Derecho de los Tratados, con entrada en vigencia en enero de 1980, establece que los Estados no podrán incumplir un tratado invocando su derecho interno, artículo 27 de la Convención. El Paraguay más bien se adscribe a la teoría dualista en lo que respecta a la incorporación de normas internacionales en su derecho jurídico interno. Por lo que, para estar vigente cualquier acuerdo o tratado internacional dentro del territorio paraguayo, deberá seguir el proceso de formación legislativa establecida en los artículos 203 y siguientes de la Constitución Nacional. Específicamente, lo prescripto en el artículo 224, inciso primero, debe iniciarse en la Cámara de Senadores. Así también, la Constitución Nacional del Paraguay, en su artículo 137, habla de la supremacía de la Constitución. Y dice lo siguiente: la ley suprema de la República es la Constitución. Esta, los tratados, convenios y acuerdos internacionales aprobados, ratificados, las leyes dictadas por el Congreso y otras disposiciones jurídicas de inferior jerarquía, sancionadas en consecuencia, integran el derecho positivo nacional en el orden de prelación enunciado. Así también, el artículo 141 de la Constitución Nacional, que habla de los tratados internacionales, dice que los tratados internacionales válidamente aprobados por la ley del Congreso y cuyos instrumentos de ratificación fueran canjeados o depositados forma parte del ordenamiento legal con jerarquía que determina el artículo 137, que habla de la jerarquía y el orden de prelación de las leyes con prioridad a la Constitución Nacional. Bueno, si bien es cierto, los estados dualistas se muestran con frecuencias abiertos a recibir la costumbre internacional como norma aplicable por sus tribunales domésticos, pero claro, el efecto directo de las normas internacionales no basta, en la medida que, aun cuando las normas internacionales ingresan al sistema jurídico nacional, en el Estado todavía podría limitar sus efectos. El Estado, por ejemplo, podría dictar una legislación contraria a la norma internacional o podría dictar normas restringiendo la posibilidad de que un Estado específico sea invocado ante los tribunales nacionales por los particulares. En ese contexto, los órganos de supervisión de los derechos humanos, específicamente en Latinoamérica, han contribuido activamente que el Estado no pueda limitar los efectos del derecho internacional que ingresó a su sistema. Es interesante observar cómo la Corte Interamericana de los Derechos Humanos ha cambiado su posición en relación a la autoejecutabilidad, un efecto directo de la Convención Americana en el ámbito de los derechos internos de los Estados partes. En 1986, en una opinión consultiva solicitada por la Corte por Costa Rica relativa a la interpretación del artículo 14, inciso primero de la Convención Americana sobre el derecho de rectificación o respuesta, la Corte sostuvo que no podría pronunciarse sobre el carácter autoejecutable de dicha disposición en el derecho costarricense, pues esa cuestión era de la competencia exclusiva del propio Estado. La Corte es consciente de que los jueces y tribunales internos están sujetos al imperio de la ley. Por ello, están obligados a aplicar las disposiciones vigentes en el ordenamiento jurídico. Pero cuando un Estado ha ratificado un tratado internacional como la Convención Americana, sus jueces, como parte del aparato del Estado, también están sometidos a ella, lo que les obliga a velar porque los efectos de las disposiciones de la Convención no se vean mermadas por la aplicación de las leyes contrarias a su efecto, y que desde un inicio carecen de efectos jurídicos. En otras palabras, el Poder Judicial debe ejercer una especie de control de convencionalidad entre las normas jurídicas internas que aplican en los casos concretos y la Convención Americana sobre los Derechos Humanos. En esta tarea, el Poder Judicial debe tener en cuenta no solamente el tratado, sino también la interpretación que él mismo ha hecho a la Corte Interamericana, intérprete última de la Convención Americana. La Corte no puede citar ningún artículo de la propia Convención Americana en que los Estados se hayan obligado a otorgar la autoejecutabilidad a la Convención. Entonces, buscando alguna autoridad, la Corte Interamericana cita el artículo 27 de la Convención de Viena sobre el derecho de los tratados. Efectivamente, el artículo 27 de la Convención de Viena establece una regla obvia del derecho internacional, según la cual los Estados no pueden excusar el incumplimiento de una obligación internacional en las disposiciones de su derecho interno. Conclusión. Si el derecho internacional no otorga las herramientas para evitar que los Estados puedan dictar las normas incompatibles con los tratados, entonces la solución debería ser buscada en el propio derecho interno, logrando establecer normas que obliguen a poner a los tratados sobre la ley. De esta manera, en el propio derecho interno, el encargado de disolver los obstáculos que pueda encontrar la implementación de las obligaciones provenientes del derecho internacional, y ese obstáculo puede, de más está decirlo, provenir de la propia política interna, que a estas alturas parece dar lo mismo que sea o no una política democrática. ¿Cómo se puede lograr esto? Otorgando a los tratados mayor jerarquía que la ley en el plano nacional. El derecho internacional de los derechos humanos nació de alguna manera vinculada a la política interna en lo que se refiere a la noción de crímenes de guerra, genocidio, torturas, discriminación racial. El movimiento de los derechos humanos ha sido exitoso en poner límites al derecho interno. La ley ya no puede tocar los tratados. Thank you.
We thank Dr. Claudio Antonio Villalba for his brief presentation, and we are now going to pass the mic over to his interpreter, who will be delivering in English. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Relationship between international law and domestic law. National law is defined as rules of general and coercive character in the territory of a state, and international law as rules between interstate relations or other subjects of international law through agreements with non-coercive character. Both form two different rights or may form a single right as well. Here are two theories. The first is called the dualistic theory that argues that international law and domestic laws are separate. They touch each other, but they do not overlap. And the rules do not apply directly to the other system unless they had been incorporated into the domestic law. It also states that there may be conflicting standards between domestic law and international, and both be in effect. Moreover, the monistic theory considers that it comprises a single law and therefore does not accept contradiction between the two, because in such case, one of the two standards should be annulled. We must distinguish between whether the conflict is resolved international or within a state headquarters. In the first case, it prevails implementation of international standards, although the idea of controlling do not override conflicting rules of domestic law, since that is a decision for the sovereignty of each state. You can only be ordered compensation for the damage suffered. The Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, which entered into force in January 1980, provides that states may not violate a treaty by invoking its domestic law, Article 27. Paraguay is ascribed to the dualistic theory regarding the incorporation of international standards into national law. So to be effective, any international agreement or treaty within the Paraguayan territory must follow the legislative process pertaining to Articles 203 prescribed in Article 224 and shall start the procedure provided in the Senate. Relevant provisions of the Constitution for the integration processes. The Constitution of Paraguay in Article 137 speaks of supremacy of the Constitution. The supreme law of the Republic is the Constitution. This, the treaties, international conventions and agreements adopted and ratified, the laws adopted by Congress and other legal provisions of lower rank, sanctioned in consequence, constitutes national positive law in the order of priority stated. The Article 141 speaks of international treaty. The validly concluded international treaties adopted by law by Congress and whose instruments of ratification were exchanged or deposited form part of the domestic legal regulations within the hierarchy determined by Article 137 and Article 224. The exclusive powers of the Senate. They are exclusive powers of the Senate, which begins consideration of bills relating to the approval of treaties and international agreements. While the dualistic states are shown open to receive international custom as applicable standard rate for their domestic courts. But of course, the direct effect of international standard is not enough. To the extent that although international standards from entering the national legal system, the state could still limit the effects. The state, for example, could enact legislation contrary to the international standard or could issue rules restricting the possibility of a specific treaty be invoked before national courts by individuals. In the context, the supervisory body of human rights, especially in Latin America, have actively contributed to dilute the border between domestic law and international law, so that the state cannot limit the impact of international law that entered its system. It is interesting to observe how American Court of Human Rights has changed its position regarding the self-enforceability of the American Convention in the area of internal rights of state parties. In 1986, in an advisory opinion requested by Costa Rica concerning the interpretation of Article 141 of the American Convention on the Right of Reply, the court held that it could not rule on the self-executing nature of the provision in Costa Rican law, because that question was within the exclusive jurisdiction of the state itself. The court is aware that domestic judges and courts are subject to the rule of law and therefore are obliged to apply the provisions in the law. But when a state has ratified an international treaty such as the American Convention, its judges as part of the state apparatus are also subject to it, which requires them to ensure that the effects of the provision of the convention are not undermined by the application of laws contrary to its object and purpose, and that from the beginning no legal effect. In other words, the judiciary must exercise a sort of conventionality control between the domestic legal provisions that apply in specific cases and the American Convention on Human Rights. In this task, the judiciary must take into account not only the treaty but also the interpretation therefore made by the court, the ultimate interpreter of American Convention. The court cannot cite any article of the American Convention in which states have been required to provide auto-enforceability to the Convention. Then, needing some authority, the Court cites Article 27 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Indeed, Article 27 of the Vienna Convention provides an obvious rule of international law, whereby states cannot excuse breach of an international obligation on the provisions of its domestic laws. Conclusion. If international law does not grant the tools to prevent states can dictate norms inconsistent with the treaty, then the solution should be sought in domestic law itself, managing to establish rules requiring put treaties in the law. Thus, domestic law itself is responsible for dissolving obstacles that confine the implementation of obligations from international law, and that obstacles can, needless to say, come from the own internal policy, which at this point seems to not to be the same as our domestic politics. How can one do that? It is by treating the treaties of international quality as the highest law. The international law of human rights bond somehow connected to internal policy as it relates to the notion of war crimes, genocide, torture, racial discrimination manner. The human rights movements have been successful in setting limits in the domestic law. The law cannot touch the treaties. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I am going to prepare for this panel, together with you, my dear students, to get engaged in the following stage of this morning's gathering. But before we do that, I would like to make a very brief description, or what I would say, thinking in Spanish, the positioning of why are we here, what are we here for, what are we expecting should be the ultimate results or the product to obtain from this meeting. Therefore, what are the roles of the participants, both the panelists as well as you, the students. The first thing that has to be highlighted, and this is very important because what is coming next, what we are going to begin to ask you to do next, has to do with what I'm going to present. The first thing we have to bear in mind is that this is an international summit of chief justices. It has to do with justice, it has to do with law, it has to do with lawyers, it has to do with people who are trained to complicate problems. To solve problems. This is what we lawyers were invented for. We were invited to India to share with you and to join forces in order to work on building a new world order. It sounds like a huge task. Perhaps it is a huge task. But because we are older and we were trained, mentally designed in a different era where things were done in a different manner, and the truth is that the world as it is today, which is the result of the elders' input, doesn't seem to have came out the way it should have. In other words, we might have not done it the best way possible or the best way required. And because there are a couple of us who feel that we might have not done the job in the best way possible, we are looking out to you who are going to be taking over as the new rulers in the world, the new guidance, the new voices, the new minds who will be doing what we did and we have been doing. We are looking out to you and calling out to you for you to analyze us, study us, criticize us, and work with us and work within yourselves to prepare a new product, a new world order. So in a way, we are actually recognizing our weaknesses. We are beginning to shift the responsibility over to you. But we do not want to shift it in an irresponsible way. We want you to be prepared to take over such responsibility. Do you think I'm being clear so far? Yes. So you're ready to work hard, huh? I hope so. It's a huge responsibility. Your advantage is that you're still not at the age where you must go out there and start working, performing. That's your advantage. So you have added value, which maybe we didn't have. No one prepared us to be rulers. No one trained us to run the world. No one told us how to run the world, and we did not have necessarily all the experience of past mistakes clearly enough, understood enough to not repeat such mistakes. Your added value, your advantage is that you are being prepared and you are exposed to our world, the way we design it, and to our mistakes. And we want you not to repeat such mistakes. We want you to have your own mistakes. That way you can't blame us for being inefficient. Well, that was a joke. No, we don't want you to be inefficient. Anyway, I haven't said this, and because this is a summit in which we are trying to unite the world for the world to be a better place for children, today's children, tomorrow's and day after tomorrow's children, we have recognized that the best way to do this, to have this better world, is by developing enforceable world law. Enforceable world law means laws that one can apply effectively. And by applying such law, we are going to be able to obtain the results that we are expecting to receive or to obtain by applying such laws. And why we want to apply new enforceable world law, it's because we have recognized that the lack of such enforceable world law is one of the reasons why the world has not resulted in a better place for today's and tomorrow's children. Do I make myself clear so far? To say it in very few words, we didn't do it too well. We don't have enforceable law, so because we didn't do it too well, we are not even going to be called to be responsible of our mistakes. No one is going to scold us. No one can tell us, oh, you didn't do it well, so now you are going to get penalized or penalized in this particular manner, because there's no law to call us to be responsible for the things we did wrong. We do not want that to continue that way. We don't want the world to continue going in that direction. We want the world to be a better world. And that's why you are here today exposed to us, so that we can interchange or exchange. You have to excuse me, sometimes I think in Spanish, and my translation is not the best. So if you see a crooked word come out, just ignore it and keep on listening to the rest, what comes after. We are here to exchange our experiences and our views. Good. So far, we know what are we here for. We know why are we here for, and we know what we want. We want enforceable world law. But we also know that we need enforceable world law for what? So that we can have an effective global governance. What does this mean in simple words? We want to have a system, a global system by which the entire world will be governed, and therefore we would be able to have better conditions and better possibilities to guarantee that the children's rights are going to be protected wherever these children may be, whether it is India, whether it is Panama, whether it is Argentina, whether it is Brazil, or whether it is Paraguay. Now, because we want a better world with a global governance for which we are going to need enforceable world law, we have been presenting you this morning the reality of how the law works in Argentina with respect to children's rights. The presentation of Argentina was to give you a glimpse on what is happening in this country, particularly in the state of Rio Negro, regarding the legislation that is oriented or designed for protection of children's rights, in particular the criminal aspects, the criminal law applicable for children. We have also given you a glimpse on how the law works in Brazil. But we're talking about domestic law in both cases, and domestic law particularly regarding to children's rights. The common ground here is that in both cases, as in many cases, most of the countries, these domestic laws are directly referenced to international regulations, international conventions that rule over children's rights, and that has been signed, international treaties that has been signed and ratified by country states in order to protect the children of the world and protect their rights. But these international instruments are later taken into the countries, and they become law, domestic laws of the country, and each country with its own independent interpretation, and based on each country's history, culture, etc., 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 design a local law that is applicable in that domestic reality, in that particular country. So we have listened to two examples, Argentina and Brazil. Now, our colleague here at the extreme left of the table has given us another perspective that blends in perfectly with the objectives pursued with this conference, and particularly with this group meeting. His perspective presented us, or opened the way for us to see, how does international regulations, so say international conventions and international treaties, are applicable within a state, a country state. What is the relation between international regulations and domestic law? And he presented a couple of issues that could become problem, and he perhaps gave us examples of problems that arises from domestic law and the way the domestic law is written, and international regulations or international treaties, and what international treaties are aiming for. When he presents this to us, the question is, who shall prevail? Should it be domestic regulation or should it be international law? This panorama, where you have been exposed first to see the realities in two countries, and then we have our expert here saying, hold on a minute. Yes, we do have national or domestic law, but there are also international regulation that rules and establishes guidelines, huge, important guidelines, which should be abided by or followed by country states. Yet, there are country states whose constitutions says, oh no, in my country, it is my law to be applied or applicable. Here is where the goal of this conference, and particularly this group meeting, comes into play. We are talking about structuring a new world order. And for that, we're talking about creating a new enforceable international law, precisely to overcome, or overcome, I think is the right word in English, the problems that we are actually facing, which is the conflict between international and domestic law. That's your job. Your job is to start working, brainstorming, learning from us, learning from the realities that exist right now, and figuring out how should this international enforceable law be designed. What are the requisites for an international law to become enforceable, which means applicable in every country of the world, no matter what domestic law says? So this is the challenge. We need to design a law that would be applicable in every country, no matter what the local law says. This is only going to be possible as we move toward a global governance. One new world order. Is it clear? Have you been able to picture? In other words, we've been talking a lot, but you guys have a lot to work to do. Okay? Good. Having said this, and having done my effort to describe the realities and the reasons why we're here. Now, the question would be, and this is where your input is required or requested, should you be the new leaders of the world? Oh boy, you answer very fast. You sure you want to be the new leaders? You sure you want to be the new leader? Oh my goodness. Well, you're getting me nervous now. But I like that. Should you be the new leaders of the world? And you see that there is a need to protect children's rights. Because it happens to be that children in India are subject of exploitation, discrimination, and their rights, child labor, and sexual abuse, physical abuse, trafficking. This is happening with children in India. But you are not Indian anymore. You are globalized. You are citizens of the world. And your duty is not only to look after the Indian children. So you have to go out there and see if what is happening to Indian children is also happening to children in many other parts of the world. And it so happened that, thank God for internet. Thank God for social media. Things like Facebook, Instagram, come on, you know them. Twitter, all of those new things that are around. Because we have those things, you don't have to wait, as we did, to have a journalist get on a plane or a boat, go many, many miles away into some foreign place on earth to see what's happening, use some kind of big, rough-looking apparatus named camera, snap the photo, and come back many, many miles on the same vessel and present that photo to you. Now you have it instantly because you have a thing named smartphone, right? And the smartphone in India, as well as the smartphone in Argentina, and the smartphone in any other part of the world, in Norway, in wherever you go, as in Panama, is capturing the reality instantly. And this reality is getting to your hands instantly. So you guys don't have to wait, and you don't have time to wait. Because the crisis of the world is to the point where we need action. We need immediate action. And you are not anymore a mere citizen of India. You are a citizen of the world. So you discover that your reality is the same in every part of the globe. Therefore, as you are the new rulers, the new leaders, you are out to design the law that is going to be applicable worldwide. Do you see the challenge? Do you understand the why of this challenge after listening to Argentina's reality as well as Brazil, which are presented to you only as examples because it's the same in Panama and it's the same in many other countries of the world? So based on these examples, you now have to tell us, how do you think and what do you think we should do in creating this new world order, but particularly the enforceability of international law? What should we do to make international law enforceable? We have listened to Claudio, and Claudio said it's not easy, right? Claudio said, well, Constitution in Paraguay says you cannot, Claudio, please correct me. You cannot apply international law just like that. You have to apply domestic law. Then he said there is a ruling by the Supreme Court of Costa Rica where a similar situation was presented, and that ruling stated that we have to refer to the international conventions that establishes the rank of international treaties with respect to national legislation or domestic legislation. And because there is this international treaty or international convention, which is the Vienna Convention, that states that no state shall use national or domestic law as an excuse for not applying international conventions. Because of this, the problem is apparently solved, but we are still having conflict between one and the other. So the question is, how would you think we can design enforceable international law? Particularly, let's use the example of protection of children's rights. Evidently, it would be enforceable law for many other aspects. But right now, let's focus on children's rights. Okay? So that's the question, and it's your turn to start talking. You want 2 minutes for brainstorming? Only 2 minutes, because you guys are from the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and that kind of era. Everything happens pretty fast, so your brains better be prepared to work in 2 minutes. It's okay? Good, you are granted the 2 minutes.
Bien, bien. Buen inglés. Perfecto. Yo borré párrafos que los dije. No estoy, mi hija tampoco lo leyó, mi traductora personal, porque es gravísima mi situación y la de a nivel nacional la Corte ha dicho sí, todo bien, los tratados de la regla internacional y en mi país tienen sentencia sobre la ley nacional, pero se puede aplicar los menores, no prisión perpetua, sino la escala de la tentativa del delito, es decir, 2/3. Esa es la conclusión de la Corte Suprema de Justicia de la Nación en mi país al día de hoy. Es gravísimo. Pero eso no lo dije porque era citar fallo. Claro.
I'm sure, children, when you are talking, you are deliberating over the question that has been asked. That is, how are you going to, if you are a part of the government, how are you going to strike a balance between the domestic law and the international law, particularly in face of the crisis that is there and to solve the problems that children are facing throughout the world? How are you going to strike a balance? What can be done? He wants to begin. Sure. Ma'am, we have a student here who wants to begin the deliberation.
Thank you very much.
Do we have your permission?
Yes, please proceed. But I would ask you to identify yourself and give us an idea, what is your educational level, what grade are you at, so that we can know how soon we can start getting rid of the problems and pass it over to your hands, depending on how old you are. That was a joke, but just give us the information.
Okay, so my name is Shivang Shrivastava, and I'm from CMS Aliganj, Campus 1. I'm 16 years old, and I have a few ideas on what you said. Before applying any laws in a country, we should see how other countries are working on it. We should see that how other countries are going on those laws and what is happening with the people there. Then we should see our country's state first. Like, why are we suffering from those problems and what is the actual need to enforce those laws? And the third point would be there should be voting and consultation among people. Like, if you want to enforce some law or some amendments in your laws, there should be some or the other consultation between the people of that country. Like, take an example of Crimea. Crimea was taken from Ukraine. There was just a simple vote from the people of the people there in Crimea. And Russians took Crimea from Ukraine recently. There were ethnic Russians and they just took Crimea from Ukraine because the people were not looked after it. So there must be consultation and votings so that the voice of the people is heard. And, there are no future, there are no wars in future if the thinking and what the people want is listened. Then I would say education is very much important for this. We see that crimes are done by people, they get punished, but at the end of the day, we realize that the people living in the country are, they are not, there's no effect on them. There's no effect on the people. So education, spiritual education should be there. Like, I'm a lover of economics and psychology, so I would talk in psychology. When you close your eyes, and when you think about your mother, the picture of your mother comes, and it tells that your brain is actually working on pictures. So when you say we should never have cigarettes, we should never take drugs. So if you don't know what are drugs, then you would definitely think, what are drugs? I should see drugs. And when you see drugs, then you would definitely say, I should try them. And then you become addicted to that. In spite of saying that we should never take drugs, we should eat, in our mind say that we should eat healthy food. Like, then you would imagine, mother cooking your food, some special dish she makes. So you would imagine that. In spite of imagining negative qualities, we should, think about positive, because our brain acts on images. And so this is, yeah, we should actually highlight the positives than the negatives, because our mind is actually working on images, and our brain is totally dependent on that. When you say you dreamt, it's not that a movie is going on. These are pictures and you are thinking about that. So, yeah. So when you say we should never abuse, so it's not that abusive languages are coming and it's coming with a cross. It's not that. But when you say we should use good words, so, you would imagine Mahatma Gandhi saying something, or a picture of Nelson Mandela would do it. So this is how we work on. We should always see the positive aspects in our life. So I think spiritual education is always required for this.
Very good. Very good. Extraordinary. Very good. Very good. Thank you so much. We have someone else who would want to share their views or even make questions. Here we have my dear friend. Could you give him the mic, please? Or there's a mic here.
I'm Krishna Dwivedi.
Wait. Is this mic? Or you want to give him that one?
Ma'am, I'm Krishna Dwivedi. Ma'am, I'm 15 years old. So I think, ma'am, we first need to, ma'am, analyze the problem. We need to look upon it. And what is the problem that children today are facing all over the world? And, ma'am, as it is written here, ma'am, that we spend about 20,000 nuclear bombs, ma'am, we have, and, ma'am, a lot of money is spent on, ma'am, producing these military weapons. I think at least half of that should be spent in children welfare, ma'am. And, ma'am, we need to find, ma'am, a government, ma'am, that looks after children, ma'am, a body, ma'am, that is specially formed for children, which look after after their rights and after, ma'am, their safety and their education. And, ma'am, even the children, those who commit crimes, they should be tried as the adults are, ma'am. They should not be given any, any kind of preference or any kind of leniency should not be shown to them. Okay. And I think, ma'am, at the grassroots level, education is the only thing, ma'am, that can change it. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very well. Thank you very much.
I want to question you. Can I?
Sure, please do.
I want a question on women's rights. Okay. You're very well associated with the International Women's Rights Association. Can you tell us about the women's condition in your country and our country? And can you tell, there are various phases where you can say that women are considered inferior. Can you tell us what can we do? What can be an initiative to work for their upliftment, to work or at least try to make a change in it?
Sure, thank you. Okay, the first thing is women are discriminated in many parts of the world and are considered inferior, unfortunately. And it is basically due to two factors. One, ignorance. I think there is lack of understanding of what and how and who women are, and our value and our importance to make a better world and to develop for development of the countries. The second one, it has to do with the concept of power. When you want to keep control over a population, one of the most important things you do, you divide the population and you try to subject those that you consider could be a main threat. Women are extraordinarily powerful because we are the ones who work, design, educate the future generation. When we have children, children are basically influenced by their mothers. So women are the ones who can transmit values. Women are the ones who transmit visions. Women are the ones who teach us to talk, who teach us to do a lot of things. So we are dangerous. No, that was a joke. No, we are, it is important to have control over women because women can make a difference. Women can change the world with men. We can't do it all by ourselves. But we have that particular input that put together with men, we could really introduce sensitive changes. So the reason for subjecting women and discriminating on women has a lot to do with the concept of control and power, with the need to overcome and to be able to reduce the capacity for changes to maintain the status quo. That's my perspective. In my country, we do have a situation of discrimination of women, though because of the characteristics of Panama, it's a very internationalized society. We are multicultural and multi-ethnic country. We have a strong influence of people from all over the world. This has given us the opportunity to grow a little on the issue of women's participation. For instance, in our judiciary, it's been many, many years now that the women are, there are more women judges than men. We have equality, if you want to put it that way, numerically speaking, with respect to the role of women in the judiciary. However, and this is why I talk about power, this is so from the high courts down. But at the level of the Supreme Court of Justice, there's hardly, when there have been women, we haven't been more than 2 among 9 judges and justices at the level of the Supreme Court. And the tendency is to disappear women. We don't have, actually, there are no women in the Supreme Court of Justice. So you have a tribunal composed of 9 justices, no women. Yet, from the high courts going down, this is like the courts of appeal and going to the other levels, to the most basic levels, the number of women increases substantially to the extreme that when you totalize in Panama, you have more women in the judiciary than men. We are majority. Okay. But again, the main way to solve the problem, from my perspective, begins with education. We do need to educate our girls. We have to educate our boys. And this is very important. It's not only to focus on women. If you want to have a society free from discrimination against women, you need to integrate men to a new gender perspective. Because the gender perspective or the gender bias is both on women as well as on men. Women could be as biased and normally are as biased as men are with respect to the gender issue. You find women, lots of women, who believe that certain roles are for men. And they educate their children with that idea. Boys do not do A, B, C, D. Girls do not do E, F, G, H. So when we raise our children and you give a doll to a girl and a kitchen set to a girl as her first toys, and you teach her to wash dishes, to take care of home, to care for the children, and to cook for the family, and you give the boy an airplane, and you give him a truck, and you give him a musical instrument, and you also give him a ball, you're telling the boy he is going to be prepared for the outside world. His role is to be an entrepreneuring, a businessman, a sports guy, whatever. But her role is to be a mom and to take care of home. So we, the mothers, are the ones who have to be mentally freed and understand that we are transmitting values. And therefore, this issue of equality and gender has to be equally disseminated among boys and girls, men and women, for the new generation to have a clear, internalized concept of equality, gender-wise. So this is my answer to your question. I don't know if I have been clear enough.
One more. My friend questioned me in the starting of the session that can you ask what is say, for the example, the UN enforces in various international laws. There are some countries who object to it. Can you tell me the cause for it? Why do they do this? What kind of mindset do they have before?
Okay, let me see if I got it clear. I'm not sure if I understood your question very clearly. Let's go slow. Remember, I'm a Spanish-speaking person. I'm English too, but my English is Caribbean English. Well, it's a long story, but let's go to the main thing here. You want to know
the cause, the why.
The why behind certain things, the cause?
Yeah, the cause, you can say, when international laws are being enforced on various countries for their upliftment, there are some countries which do not accept them. They say, it's not for us. It's you. Other countries can accept them, but we won't. Why? What cause? Can you tell me what cause do they have behind all that?
Okay. Well, you are giving me back your job, you know. But I'll abide with that. Number one, when a country waives its responsibility with respect to applying international law, they are saying, this country is actually saying that they do not want to be part of the new order. International law is designed to establish and provide conditions for a new order to be functional. You want to have common grounds for everyone, everywhere. Now, in doing this, one has to be particularly careful to not abolish tradition and culture. Because if you try to do this, you would be going against human nature and you would be violating human rights. In some culture, and I'll use an example, in India, women dresses with sari and okay, you dress beautifully as you do. I don't have the words, the name to describe the way you dress. In my country, women do not dress like you. So if we create an international law for a new world order, should this international law include establishing how shall women dress? Should we, based on international law, pretend to censor women who covers their heads in Arabic countries? That would be a violation of her and their human rights, because it is trespassing into culture, tradition, and history. So this is one of the challenges, one of the major sensitive challenges you will have to face when working on designing that international enforceable law. The most important thing before we start working on international enforceable law is to define what are the issues this law would be ruling on. For what are we creating this new law? Is it to make everybody look alike? Is it to make everybody to think exactly the same? Would it be for everybody to walk the same way? Would it be for everybody to worship the same God with the same characteristics and traditions and rituals? No. It must be a law designed to allow human being to live decently, honorably, at the highest standards possible within their historical and cultural realities. It must be a law designed specifically to attend the needs, survival needs of the people, and survival include survival of their culture. It cannot be a law that is going to authorize destruction of temples. It cannot be a law, an international order that is going to agree in destruction of books and history. So my reply or my answer to your question would be, the first thing you may have to enter into consider is, what is this law going to rule on? For what do we need an international enforceable law? Why do we want a new world order? Is this really necessary? If it is, if the answer is yes, then in what direction? What kind of new world order do we think would be better than the one we have so far? Because the only reason we are engaged in such huge exercise is because we are not pleased with what we have. We find that what we have failed to deliver and to respond to humankind's need in all parts of the globe. And we are saying, because this is the reality, changes must be introduced. But when we are beginning to work on changes, we have to be very careful. And that is your responsibility, because you are going to be taking over. We are going to be going home to make tea and relax, finally. And hopefully. Okay? Have I responded to your question? Thank
you. Good afternoon, honorable judges. I want to ask a question. May I?
You don't want to be able to answer some of the questions? And I want to give my colleagues the opportunity to respond to questions as well. Para ver si ustedes también pueden venir y dar alguna respuesta. Voy a pasarles el micrófono. Paso el micrófono para que ustedes puedan aportar si quieren responder alguna pregunta de aquí en adelante. Okay, I'm sorry. El problema que tiene que volver a traducir.
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, please, proceed.
Ma'am, my question is, nowadays, as we all know, many steps have been taken for the elimination of weapons of mass destruction. But then also, there are some countries who are manufacturing weapons of mass destruction. Is there any world body to whom the countries that make such weapons become answerable?
¿Hay alguien? ¿Qué fue lo último?
Could you please repeat the last part of your question?
Is there any world body to whom the countries that make such weapons become answerable?
Thank you very much. We're going to ask Maria to respond to your question.
Sí. Y si hay algún organismo que lo controle. Yo te lo voy a editar. Your name?
Vidushi.
Fidushi.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Me too, ma'am.
Very good question. It is a big worry that the issue that you mentioned. Okay. 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 From a long time ago, there are international organisms that a lot of countries are in them and that have signed international treaties that refer to peace in the world, relationship between states and the people who live in their countries, and the compromise of not doing war. United Nations, the OTAN, I'm sorry, I don't know how to translate. NATO? The NATO? Among others. The ones that were created after the Second World War. So we have a lot. Yes, she's mentioning the first that were created, that are absolutely useless. They only speak in reunions. They don't do anything, but at the same time, they don't have power to make an intervention in the countries because they are international. They are like from good faith. They pact with a very old international rule that in Latin,
Pacta sunt servanda.
agreement shall be prevailed, but nothing is done. They're only desire expressions. The possessions of weapons and killing us between each other is growing up. Yes? Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we are running out of time. Is there anyone? The last question? Oh, that's great. Could you repeat that, please?
Ma'am, I wanted to provide an answer to the question you asked. Ma'am, my friends told about providing spiritual education and punishing the children, but they forgot about eradicating poverty. It is the main cause that children are forced to do child labor. For example, if I am a poor child, and if anyone gives me an offer of giving me money in place of work, then I would probably choose to do it. So we should first eradicate poverty to remove child labor. That's all.
Thank you very, very much, and I absolutely agree with you. I have nothing to add. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, we have run out of time. Do we have for one more question? Our commentary. Sure, proceed.
In the current society, basically child crimes have been increasing a lot, and a lot of countries, including India, have lowered the age of children who can be convicted of heinous crimes. Now, in my opinion, if I'm 17, so basically if I am liable for a heinous crime, but I don't have the right to vote in my country. I'm not 18, so I cannot vote. So I want to ask about this paradox between the juvenile justice and the amount of freedom that can be given to a person. In a democracy, I think a democracy can only run if equal rights are given, including and relative to the duties. So my question to you is, how does one balance the juvenile law with the, how can, do we need to decrease the age, or we can just make the juvenile justice laws much better so that the countries around us, that the children crimes can decrease?
That's a very interesting question. I would ask my colleagues if they wish to, anyone wishes to address this question.
Sanciones más severas como si fueran adultos, aún siendo menores frente a determinado tipo de crimen. Sin embargo, los menores no tienen derechos políticos. O sea, un menor no puede votar, no puede participar en decisiones del país.
Isso está acontecendo no Brasil.
Okay, I'm translating the question to Spanish for my colleague to be able to address the group. And I'm explaining in Spanish as follows. La joven ha planteado un dilema, realmente es un dilema, y es que la legislación penal aplicable a conductas infractoras de la ley, a menores infractores de la ley, tiende a bajar la edad de responsabilidad criminal, tiende a querer penalizar con castigo más severo, penalizar como adultos a menores que incurren en determinadas conductas infractoras. Sin embargo, lo paradójico es que los menores de edad no tienen ciertos derechos políticos. Los menores de edad no pueden votar, no pueden tomar decisiones políticas, no intervienen en la sociedad como sujetos activos dentro del diseño democrático. ¿Cómo se puede manejar o balancear esa dicotomía, esa situación en donde por un lado se es menor de edad y por ende no se tiene la capacidad de intervenir en las decisiones de políticas del Estado, puesto que no se puede votar, entre otras cosas, pero por el otro lado se le aplican normas propias, de sanciones propias de adultos frente a conductas que entran dentro de la calificación de delito o conductas infractoras de la ley penal? Ese es el dilema que plantea la joven y que quisiera que nosotros le diéramos nuestra impresión al respecto. Yo te traduzco.
Perfecto. Bueno, me parece totalmente injusto.
I believe it's absolutely unfair.
En cuanto a menores de edad, es un estudio psicológico. El menor, hay que ver la capacidad que tenga para discernir si está haciendo bien en la comisión de los hechos punibles, si que tiene esa capacidad de reprochabilidad.
With respect to criminal law for minors, the situation has to do with the development or psychological development or matureness of a juvenile. The criminal behavior or the behavior of an underage, what is considered a child or a juvenile, it's determined by the level of matureness that he or she may acquire. And at the time that you are going to be applying criminal law, it's very important to establish which is the level of matureness that psychological and emotionally this kid, this child have acquired when he has or she has committed a crime.
En cuanto a menores, no podemos dejar de hablar de la responsabilidad del Estado hacia los menores.
When we talk about children, we cannot avoid addressing the issue of the government's and state responsibility with respect to the children.
Esa responsabilidad que se inicia a partir de la familia, y si la familia no puede no puede coordinar esa situación, entonces el Estado debe hacerse responsable con respecto a los menores.
This responsibility implies also the capacity that families may have to be able to handle the situation at home, and particularly their family's capacity to take care of their children. When the families are not able, the state or the governments should intervene and take over their responsibility in protecting the families and particularly the children and providing the children of their needs.
Me parece a mí que ningún Estado, ¿verdad?, con esa situación pueda desligarse de esa responsabilidad y responsabilizar a un menor de edad con respecto a hechos punibles que están cometiendo justamente por la desprotección del Estado y de la familia.
In my opinion, his opinion, this creates or poses us on the following paradigm. He believes that it is impossible for one to detach from the fact that the government states are responsible and must assume their responsibility with respect to families as well as with respect to protecting and guarding children. Should children and families become unable to provide their needs, emotionally and material needs, therefore states cannot just act as if they have no responsibility when that child under such circumstances behaves or commit a crime, and therefore there should be some level of enforceability or what you would say accountability by the state with respect to the families and the children's behavior. That's my answer. His answer. Thank you. Maria wants to add her input on with regards to Argentina with respect to that same question.
In our country, Argentina, that issue that you just said was also established in Argentina, that it doesn't match the possibility of being convicted and to choose our representatives. So what happened in Argentina is that the age when you can vote was also lowered. So in Argentina you can vote at 16, and you can also you can also be convicted for a crime at 16. Minors crimes. So, yes, did you understand? Okay.
Thank you so much, Maria. That is interesting. I have learned something new, and I think it's a very interesting example that you youngsters, future leaders, would have to take into consideration. It also goes along with what the young student, 16 years old, suggested, and this is, we shall look into how each country handles each case and learn from their formulas, see if there is something that we can rescue and apply worldwide in the new designing of an unenforceable world law. Thank you so much. We have definitely run out of time, and we don't want to abuse your interest and your time here. And we do not want to give your professors or teachers an excuse to punish you because you didn't get on time. Neither we want to give your teachers or professors the opportunity to take advantage of having you held in this room with these bunch of old folks telling their stories from different parts of the world. So we can say that this meeting is adjourned, and we are getting ready to move forward. Thank you so much. It's been a great experience to be with you.
My mom wants to give you a little present.
We want to ask you to share with us for a few minutes, because our colleague from Argentina has something she wants to share with the members of this panel.
Paraguay.
This is a small little token that, with much love, she is bringing to each one of the sisters and brothers from Latin American countries who have been part of this panel. Thank you. I am entitled to mine.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
thank you so much. It's a poster from Argentina.
I'm sure, dear
Thank
students
you.
and all the teachers and all the guests who are present here, I can very well thank the panel of judges that we have had over here today in this session. And it was a dynamic, lovely, very interactive and very interesting session with you. And I'm sure Madam Dixon made it the most interesting. Thank you very much for your presence here. And we have learnt quite a lot. I'm sure children have been enriched and they'll go back home with new ideas and something new to think about. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.